Hey, if you're on a K-12 IT team, you know the feeling of being on the front lines. So this explainer, it's really for you. We're going to move beyond just planning for a disaster and start talking about building proven readiness. So let's get into what verifiable resilience actually looks like for your district.
Just let that sink in for a second. More than one incident every single school day. This isn't some distant, maybe it'll happen threat. This is a constant, day in, day out reality. So the question really isn't if an incident is going to happen, it's how prepared are you for when it does?
And really, this is the heart of the challenge, right? K-12 districts, we're a gold mine of sensitive data. We're talking student records, parent financials, all that staff information. It makes us target rich, but we're often working with tight budgets and small teams, which makes us cyber poor. It's a really tough spot to be in, but it's exactly why being smart and strategic about resilience is so absolutely critical. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to frame the challenge itself. Then we'll dive into continuity planning, build an unbreakable backup foundation, and put together a recovery playbook. And then we'll get to the most important part, how to turn that plan into proven, battle-tested resilience. Okay, let's jump in. So with limited resources, how in the world do we tackle such a huge problem? Well, the smart move is not to reinvent the wheel. We can lean on a proven, industry-standard approach that gives us a really clear path forward. And that approach is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. It organizes everything into 5 core functions. Now, they're all important, but let's be realistic. Perfect prevention just isn't going to happen. So for today, we're going to focus our investment in the 2 functions that matter the most when things go wrong: how we respond and how we recover. An effective response and recovery, it starts long before a disaster ever even hits. It all begins with a solid plan, or actually a set of coordinated plans that protect the entire mission of the district. Let's take a look at how these pieces fit together. This distinction is so critical for schools. We need 2 key plans: the Business Continuity Plan, or BCP, that handles the business of the district. Payroll, phones, the essential services. But the Learning Continuity Plan, the LCP, that protects our core mission, education. It's the one that answers the question, how do we keep teaching and learning happening even if our main systems are totally offline? And the foundation for both of these plans is the Business Impact Analysis. The BIA is where you figure out your most critical systems, you understand how they all depend on each other, and you prioritize the order of recovery. Honestly, without this, you're just guessing in the dark during a crisis. So the BIA helps you define 2 crucial metrics. The first one is your recovery time objective, or RTO. This answers a pretty simple question. How fast do we absolutely need this system back online? For your identity management system, that might be a few hours. For an archival server, maybe it's a few days. And the second metric is your recovery point objective, or RPO. This one answers, how much recent data can we really afford to lose? For a student information system, losing more than, say, 15 minutes of data could be a catastrophe. For a file server with curriculum docs, maybe losing a day's worth of changes is okay. Your RPO is what directly tells you how often you need to be backing up. And that brings us right to the technical bedrock of all recovery efforts. Your RTOs and RPOs, they're just theoretical goals if you don't have sound, reliable backups. Without them, there is no recovery. Period. Now, the gold standard for data protection is the 3-2-1 rule. It's simple, it's memorable, and it is incredibly effective. You need 3 total copies of your data on at least 2 different types of media, with one of those copies located completely off-site. And what's even better is making that off-site copy air-gapped, which just means it's physically disconnected from any network, making it basically invisible to an attacker. You have to understand that modern ransomware, it doesn't just encrypt your live data. It actively hunts down and destroys your backups to block any chance of recovery. And this is why immutability is your non-negotiable last line of defense. An immutable backup simply cannot be changed or deleted for a set period of time, not even by an admin. It is your guarantee of a clean copy to restore from. Okay, so beyond the 3-2-1 rule, a few key practices make your backups truly usable. You've got to keep them geographically separate. You have to test them regularly, because let's face it, a backup you can't restore is just a waste of space. It's also so important to document the entire restoration process and review everything at least once a year to make sure it all still works. All right, now imagine the worst has happened. Your network is down, servers are offline, you can't even log in. How do you even begin the recovery process?
You can't rely on the very same infrastructure that's been compromised. You need an offline playbook. You need a Go kit.
Think of this kit as your ground zero toolkit. It's got everything you need to start rebuilding from scratch, totally without a network. We're talking isolated laptops to prevent reinfection, actual hard copies of network maps and vendor contacts, USB drives with clean OS images and encrypted credentials. It should also have a RACI chart which clearly lays out who is responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed for every single recovery task.
And this right here is the guiding principle. Every single item in your Go kit has to be usable in a total blackout. If you need to log into the network to access your recovery plan, well, your plan has failed before you've even started.
So, we've built the plan, we've established our backup strategy, we've assembled the Go kit. But right now, it's all just theory. A plan on paper is not the same as resilience in practice. So the final and most critical step is to prove it all works. So let me ask you, think about your district's disaster recovery binder. You know the one, it's sitting on a shelf somewhere. Is that document, by itself, enough to guarantee a smooth recovery under the intense pressure of a real crisis? The answer, of course, is no. The real difference between a chaotic, failed recovery and a secure, systematic one, it comes down to a single word: practice. It's all about building that critical muscle memory for your entire team. And the best way to practice is through tabletop exercises. Think of them as guided, scenario-based walkthroughs of your disaster plan. You get your team together, you present a realistic crisis, like a ransomware attack, and you just talk through every single step of the response. It's a really safe way to find the holes in your plan before a real attacker does. This is the cycle of true resilience. It's not a one-and-done project. You test the plan, and you will find flaws. A missing password, an undocumented dependency, a step that's unclear. That's the whole point. You fix the documentation, you improve the procedure, and then a few months later, you test it all again. It is a continuous loop of improvement. So we'll end with this. A plan is a great start, but it's only a start. True confidence, verifiable resilience, it only comes from testing. It comes from knowing, not just hoping, that your team can execute under pressure. The real challenge is to move your district's resilience off the page and into practice.